Oh, hi everyone, thank you for tuning in to another amazing episode of Holding Court with the Empress of West Hollywood. My name is Enoch Miller, I'm your Empress here, and we want to thank you again for all your support and also for our amazing producers, GayLifeLA.com, as also for Kings Road Apartments, because they're the ones that let us have this amazing space here. And we want to have a special shout out to our amazing guest right here. It's Glass Battles!
Hello.
I'm so excited. Oh, studio audience, please calm yourselves. So, for those who don't know, Glass Battles has been around for, you've actually been around for, since 2009, roughly.
Yeah, 2008 and 2009 was kind of like the baby beginning of everything, yeah.
That's when she first came out of the womb. Mm-hmm. And then you've been doing this kind of off and on for the majority of it since 2009.
Yeah.
And then a lot more hardcore since 2015, since everything came out. But let's start as the very beginning. You're originally from back out east.
At Massachusetts.
In Massachusetts.
Yeah, I moved here about 12 years ago, lived in San Diego for a year, and then bumped up to Los Angeles.
And so I always love asking people this when they come from different parts of the coast around here in the U.S. What was your kind of biggest experience growing up on the East Coast compared to now living on the West Coast?
Well, I'm from Pittsfield, Massachusetts, which is part of Berkshire County, so it's a city technically, but there's kind of a very tight-knit small town feel to it too, which is nice, and there's 4 seasons, which is also something that I miss from time to time. So I mean,
yeah.
There's something that's terrible though about December 15th or so and getting 85-degree weather. You're just kind of doesn't seem completely correct. I can't really complain.
I like my seasons, summer and less summer.
Summer and summer light.
Summer light, exactly. So with growing up there, because again, a lot of people say from East to West Coast, the demographic between the two types of culture is very rushed and kind of it's a little bit more fast-paced when you go to the East Coast compared to West Coast. We're a lot more laid back. Massachusetts not being quite like a New York or Chicago or something like that. What do you see as the difference between that type of living from that East Coast area to compare to here?
Well, I've always been a very fast-paced person in general. It's everything I eat fast, I talk fast. It fuels my anxiety, which fuels my creativity. But I feel a lot of people out here are more open. Well, I feel there's a level of light opportunism in Los Angeles on the West Coast too, because everybody's they're pursuing so many different goals that nobody wants to piss off the wrong person or that kind of thing. So on the surface level, there's a lot of people that are very open and willing to kind of create relationships a little bit more quickly.
Okay.
And I have found some of my best friends, and I've considered them family out here in Los Angeles as well. But I feel in Massachusetts and on the East Coast, I think people do take a little bit more time to edify and create relationships, because there's not really an impetus for that opportunism, because they're kind of just, there's...
They got things to do.
They're people with real careers.
They're not all actors and musicians, and even though most of the musicians we have here are pretty good, so especially a lot of our local musicians, which is what I love that, especially having you on, is the local aspect of you being so entrenched in your community and being entrenched with the people that actually live, work, and you perform locally. You perform at places that people are aware of when they live here in the LA area. Let's go to why music. Why be a musician and want to pursue that type of career?
Well, my musical background is very limited. I played saxophone for years, and my father was a drummer as well. But I think growing up, both my mother and my father were very musically inclined, as far as they both have a wide variety of tastes in music. So my sister and I were raised on so many different artists, and they all kind of trickled down. I never thought I was going to go into music. I actually moved here because I was I want to be an actor, just like everybody does. And I literally didn't do anything with it. I just kind of was had an idea in my head, and then it just randomly was just kind of it started off with shitty programs like GarageBand, and then from there, I mean, it was actually not a shitty program, but in comparison to a studio being able to produce it effectively. But I began to just kind of tool around a little bit with those things, and from there I taught myself Reason, which is another program, and then from there I taught myself Logic, and then it became this project of my own where I was what am I doing? And then I never even considered myself much of a singer. I was in musical theater, and I know that I could at least carry a tune, but I would never even deign myself to be it just turned into something. Tanya Dahl was an artist that I met on Craigslist, because we both were just kind of looking for the same thing, which was a different version of maybe we do this kind of thing. And then from there our confidence built, and I think it's because our early reception was so great, even for us being so new, that it really kind of emblazoned our confidence in that way. So I think from there, just kind of built on itself. And looking back now at all my favorite artists, as I'm rambling, and looking back on all my favorite artists that have influenced me, like I think I've always wanted to be in music without really knowing it, because I was obsessed with all these people that were self-produced and self-written.
Right.
And so it just kind of turned into its own thing.
It's really hard, though, honestly, for a lot of people to go in there and actually just to put yourself out there like that. Mm-hmm. First of all, being initially a duo and not really knowing a ton and having to be self-taught on a lot of these things. And for a lot of people who don't know, I mean, Logic is not an easy program to learn all the time, because you've got to figure out the nuances of it all, and it's still, you've got to figure out what it does for you, because some of those programs really make you their bitch sometimes.
I mean, people go to school for it too.
Yeah, exactly. It's an entire career sometimes with learning how to do those. So it's not an easy process, but what was your initial thoughts going into it of being like, okay, these were some of the hurdles we have to face, but you know, as soon as I get over these, I'm going to actually be doing good. And what were those initial kind of like, what am I going to figure out to do in order to kind of get myself to that step of actually putting music out there to people to hear?
Well, I think when Tanya and I met, we literally called a studio, because we had no idea how to do anything. We called a recording studio and we were like, we'd like to record a song, please. And they were like, and it was Brian Eno's Baby's on Fire. We wanted to do a cover of that for some reason, but then they were like, okay, they're like, so how many musicians? And we were like, none. And so from there we had to find musicians who ended up becoming some of our best friends, and still are some of my best friends as well. And because in the beginning it was my friend Ashley was one of Tanya's best friends. They met on a Miley Cyrus video shoot years ago.
Okay.
Because they both were in production. And from there we found a drummer and guitarist. It was Albert and Josh at the time. And then from there, basically, I think from the beginning it was kind of we already knew. We were very self-aware of the fact that we had no idea what we were doing in the beginning. So it's kind of that's always stuck with me, and that keeps me humble, because I don't ever get to a point where I'm on top of something where I'm I'm so fucking good at it. It's kind of just no matter what, I always have that kind of mindset of there's so much more to learn. And I feel from there is when we entered into the Raw Artist competition, which I don't even know what we were thinking. I mean, which it turned out great, but because we literally had played one show. No, that was our first show. We played at the Raw Artist competition. We entered a national music competition because I guess we were feeling pretty good about ourselves at that point, but we had a couple songs recorded, and we played the second show, and then we ended up winning the national competition for Band of the Year in the entire country, which was crazy to us, because there's been people that have been working a lot longer, and it seemed just kind of too good to be true in that way. And I think that just kind of, that level of confidence set a bar for me and for the musicians and the artists that I've worked with, where I at least have that idea that I know that in some frame, and hopefully in a general way, you know, it's been well received. So
well, and let's talk about, because that's a big deal. First of all, winning Musician of the Year, and for what you guys did on, like you said, your first time ever doing anything that big. What was your initial experience going into it, and kind of how were you guys handling the whole being live, being there in front of people, expressing yourselves? Because it's a big deal to do it from just doing it in the studio compared to actually doing it live in front of an actual audience. What was your initial experiences doing that for Raw, and kind of your initial maybe anxieties, or kind of course. What was all of that?
It was terrifying, our first show, because we had first of all, entering a competition with kind of literally the first show we ever actually played was we rented out rehearsal space that we rehearsed at, and we did a show for friends for the first time. So, but we ended up getting we rehearsed so much just in the beginning, because we knew because it was different too. The way we were doing it was a lot of the actual background tracks were just tracking, and so we were learning how to program that for our drummer and for guitars and stuff. And so there was a whole thing that we had to keep rehearsing just to get that down, so our show existed when we would go on stage. And once we did it, though, that show, I was I can barely remember it, just because it
just flew by so fast.
It was surreal in that weird way. So, and then the second show we played for the competition was just like that as well. And then when we ended up winning the competition, we were we can do this, we can win. But I think a part of us were if we don't win, none of us are going to be
there was no expectation initially. So what kind of inspires also, and it's like a little bit of a backtrack, but what kind of inspires what you guys do as your kind of your style and everything with that, because your initial inspiration for most of this is very 70s-esque kind of vibe and everything with that. What kind of really pulled in your guys' original inspiration for what you wanted to do when you came to writing the actual music?
For me, it's always, I think I'm very heavily influenced by 80s pop music, and on the other hand, I'm very and then I think tonality and sort of like things that I write about are very influenced by like late 90s music as well. And it's not because I was obsessed with Garbage and Nine Inch Nails and Robin. I'm still obsessed with.
I love Robin. Actually. Yeah, I'm obsessed with Robin.
Love her. She's a huge influence for me as well. And I think just pairing those two things together, we had that rock and synth sound, and of course these bands had sort of like trailblazed this genre because they're like a band like Garbage 2 at that time when version 2.0 came out, which was like, it was a heavily rock influenced pop album with like pop synths and so many weird different 80s throwbacks and music that people had never heard before, and it was kind of like genreless. And I think a lot of the times when people are talking about my music too, they don't really know exactly like where to place it, because it's not quite pop music. It is obviously to a great degree, and then it's not quite, you know, and then when they see us live too, when I have my musicians come in, it's very it's very rock heavy, just because if you have live guitars, bass, and drums, like there's no way it's not going to be. But
it's gonna be, regardless of what you do with that.
Yeah.
But so like going back to like you were saying that your parents introduced you to a lot of music. Was there any artists specifically that stood out to you that you're like, oh my god, these are, when you're looking back at them, they were like, oh my god, these were the kind of people I wanted to emulate, or I wanted to kind of model my music after?
I think not weirdly, I guess, but one of the big ones was my dad really, really enjoyed Electric Light Orchestra, and they were just like, because I was obsessed with their music when I was little, just because one of their records that he had like a spaceship on the cover, and I was like, that's so cool. But I think there's just, he played, like, it was like a lot of Phil Collins, a lot of Bruce Springsteen, a lot of Kate Bush, and then my mother liked Mary Chapin Carpenter and Bonnie Raitt, and there was kind of just a lot of weird different artists. And then I was like obsessed with Aqua because
now we know why he's gay. Okay, got it.
My parents didn't know yet somehow. Blasting Barbie girl in my bedroom, and my sister got me into Garbage, and then I started listening to Bush and No Doubt and stuff like that too. So it was just sort of like
a progression.
I think that's why I kind of like don't really ever want to stick to one specific genre, because I have so many things that I really have enjoyed and really influenced by as well.
Well, and it makes sense too, because when you hear your music, it obviously it's your own thing, but it really, you can take so many different elements from it that really you like, oh, I recognize that from this era, I recognize it from that era, I recognize it from these types of bands. And it's a really cool, I know Doug had mentioned earlier that it was like a really cool like erasure even feel.
Yeah.
And it's got that fun element of, you want to headbang, but you also can still move and like relax to it and have a good time, enjoy it. Exactly. Dance and cry, which we do a lot here at WeHo.
At the same time.
So you've kind of coined this phrase a little bit with it in a lot of different interviews you do, and some of the things, the way you describe it as well, as spook-pop. And so I had never heard of it before until obviously I had met you. Could you really explain to us what that even means, and is this like just your own made-up definition, or is this an actual definition?
No, pretty much it doesn't exist.
It doesn't exist.
I guess I'm the purveyor of spook-pop, I guess. But it started off just kind of as like a thing I would describe to like the musicians I was working with as well, and just because like a lot of my songs kind of like they exist either in like a lot of minor chords, like Danny Elfman, who does the music for Tim Burton films and so many other films as well, like his music has always really appealed to me, and I feel like there's certain elements with production and song progressions, and this is like the most boring description, but I'm like going into like notes and shit. No, but it's I think honestly for me it's like atmosphere. I really like things that have like a lot of kind of like tonal differentiality in the song. Like I like a song that has like really kind of pop driven like synths, and then you have kind of like a weird dark vocal over it. And I think even when Lady Gaga released Bad Romance back in the day, like that was like an interesting shift back towards a much more heavier pop sound than it had been for so many years, because the early 2000s was all like candy pop and just kind of like everyone's having a good time, but like nobody was really kind of pushing it. And I always enjoyed that entire arena of just kind of like keeping things a little bit darker and spookier without like obviously without being like I don't know, Marilyn Manson, but I don't love Marilyn Manson.
Without being like death metal or anything crazy like that.
Death pop.
Death pop. Oh, that's
going to be the progression. Actually.
Right, there you go. That means they explode your eardrums at the end.
Right.
You just bleed out your ears. But, so it's a really interesting concept, because it's like, I see what you mean by the keeping it a little bit more dark, and you learn that overtone of kind of mystery and like intrigue, but still having that poppy element of like, you want to like dance to it, you want to have something you can move to. When you kind of got through all this, and it really getting into the aspect of being now in the spotlight, you guys won Raw, and then you started doing as well the SXSW, South by Southwest, South by Southwest, and he did that for 3 years consecutively, which anyone doesn't know, that's in Austin, Texas. What was your kind of initial experience? Now you're starting to do live performances, you're starting to be a little bit more in the limelight with that. What was your initial experience of, because a lot of people say it's so different from you're in studio, you're recording, compared to being out there and in front of people. What's your experience on the difference between in studio to live performance?
So much, just because I've always written and produced everything for when it was the 5-piece band and now as my solo project. So for me, it was kind of like a very quick process because Tanya and I would do vocals, and occasionally we would bring in one of our other collaborative musicians to record some stuff. But because it's synth pop, we usually we had the tracking already ready.
Right.
Sometimes we would like attempt live synth, but it's not really necessary once you're already in the studio if you have the tracks and stuff. So it was super quick, super efficient. We literally hang out for like 3 hours. Also very super expensive, so because everything's been self-funded, and in the beginning it was like, you know, us trying to like figure out financing for having a song done so we could play it live, and then but playing live there's so much more freedom. I feel like you can have so much more fun just because it's not like you're not on the clock, you're not paying there or paying to be on stage, and you get to actually kind of like, you know, have fun with it. And I think South by Southwest was sort of like the next goal for us after we played a few shows in Los Angeles after Raw and stuff. We were like, what else can we do, and like how can we kind of expand the process? And you know, Tanya and Ashley were both obsessed with that festival because Ashley's from Texas. And so she's from Abilene, but she had gone to South by Southwest a few times, or a couple times I think, and it just ended up like that experience it's fucking nuts. Like it's like the craziest party. It's like it's all 6th Street. Everything becomes a venue.
Oh no, it's huge. I've been it once when I used to live in Texas, in like South or Northwest Texas, and it's, I mean, you go there and it is this giant event. They have tons of bands there, from local to not so well known to these huge artists as well. And it's a really great. It's almost like it's a fun version of like going to like Coachella, but it's not quite as like
it's nice because like Coachella, like I still haven't gone yet. I would love to play Coachella. I'm not sure I like want to go to the festival myself. I'm just because like I don't like the idea of being stuck in one area that I can't get out of. Right. Especially when it's like 110 degrees.
Oh, well, exactly. And you have a bunch of crazy like sweaty weird people from
Flower Crown, like Molly dropping like people.
Oh, WeHo. Welcome to WeHo.
I mean,
that's our Friday night.
That's Saturday. Yeah, exactly.
This guy's like subjudging the rest of us. That's us. Only sometimes, maybe all the time. We don't know.
Maybe right now.
Maybe right now. But so it is a really big experience, and plus, I mean, it thrusts you into this category of being really exposed to a huge demographic. What was your initial feedback from fans on that, seeing you guys perform, and was there any kind of like really positive feedback initially, or did it kind of take a year or two for them to kind of
like our feedback, thankfully and just strangely, has always been generally positive. I think most artists and most sound engineers on stage actually, like, usually if they don't know us, if they haven't heard us before, they're usually like already rolling their eyes when we're like figuring out like the tracking before we put something, because they're like, okay, they're like, they're legitimate musicians, because yes, they have guitar, bass, and drums and synth, but they're also doing tracking, and we have background vocals and stuff, because I've always, whenever we play live, I always wanted background vocals for harmonies and stuff, because I want it to, you know, be not necessarily as close to the recording as possible, but I do want it to be like, you know, relatively close.
You want it to sound basically the same as what you do.
Yeah, of course. I mean, like, it's going to sound different no matter what, but I think that's the only thing that the only negative reception I've ever gotten as an artist has been something like that, like playing South by Southwest, like setting up and stuff. People are always like, oh, okay, but like within like half a song, they're like, oh, this is actually great, and then like afterwards, I always get like, you know, weird compliments. They're like, that was actually really good, and I'm like, thank you,
and fuck you. Thank you for misjudging me, the fact that I am good, and the reason I'm here is because I am.
Right.
But, it's a big deal, too, of also trying to put all this stuff, again, you're doing all this stuff by yourselves, you don't really have a professional, like, big company behind you supporting you guys through this entire thing, it's all done by you. And so going through the entire process, and at the time currently during this, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was more or less the band aspect of it all. Yeah. With you, and it was 4 others including you, or 5?
Yeah. It was 4 others.
4, okay, so it's 5 of you in total. And so, and then you started your solo career right around 2015, is when you started doing it now just by yourself. And what was that initial transition between group to solo?
It's funny because a lot of the live stuff, like, I've been blessed to have worked with the musicians that I still work with right now that are like, and Ashley and Zach, bassist and drums respectively, they play with me live too, and I have my friend Scott play guitar, my friend Brian will also play drums as well, depending on the show and that type of thing. And I think honestly it was more of just kind of like, we all went through a different transition as far as like what we want to do as a career.
Right.
And I found it became a really hard task for me to kind of like round up everyone or even somebody else rounding up the 5 of us. Like it became hard for us to like run at the same speed all the time because it's different people's schedules. A lot of them were in video production as well, so they had like, legitimate like ridiculous like 14-hour days. And so for me, I needed to just pull away and make it a solo thing because I wanted to be able to like kind of go full steam and and I can obviously like plan around my life very easily without having to plan around 5 other people's. And whenever I play shows, they're always they are always offering to play and stuff. They've been so great, and I think honestly we still have the same like kind of collaborative minds. Like it's great to talk about it, but it's also great to talk about these things with them as just friends because I can put pressure on myself, and I can take as much pressure as much as that child yelling outside can as well.
Our fans, we're gonna go Trump. We're gonna go exterminate a few things right now, so we'll be back in a minute. But no, it's great to find because I mean you hear a lot of times when people go from group to solo, there's this weird disconnect all of a sudden. It's like, oh, it was he said, she said, all this shit, and it's great that you guys still work together, you collaborate. They still are more or less a part of Glass Battles going forward with everything.
Yeah, and they're always going to be a part of it too. Yeah, and I think they all have such amazing talents, and I think the majority of them actually all is like video production. But so they have a lot of, I mean, and who knows what will happen at this point. Like I don't know if it's ever going to be sort of like I also feel like just from a marketing perspective, just it's easier for me to market myself as a solo artist instead of having to always kind of because right now in this kind of situation, this kind of interview, like if this were in the past, there's always like people that can't make it or people that like don't blah blah blah. Like it just becomes like a weird thing all the time where like we're just trying really hard to all be on the same page. It's a lot of work. Virtually impossible.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and also like you said, you're one person trying to deal with 5 other people's schedules, and it obviously isn't always going to mesh because of this, that, and the other, and work and all that other stuff. Because you guys still had jobs on top of doing this all on the side as well. So let's go to the actual music of everything that we're talking about here. Let's start, before we actually get into the 4 main songs that you have, that's kind of the quintessential Glass Battles and what they kind of describe with what you do. Let's talk a little bit about your process of creating music, because I know a lot of musicians have different ways they come to it and kind of have their own artistic creative process. Kind of what is, like, just walk us through you coming up with an idea, putting a pen to paper, and then actually producing it in studio.
Usually, like, the way it's... Because I'm always like obsessing over like new song ideas all the time, just because I'm always in my head, and I usually walk everywhere, so I'm like walking like 45 minutes at a time, and so like when I'm doing stuff like that, like I'm always thinking of like different pop hooks or things that I want to hear and things that like I haven't heard before, or I will like write maybe like 15 seconds of just instrumental like pretty strings or something and just have that looping for a while, and I had that with when I did All Hearts, which was my first kind of official single. I had just the bridge, which is just strings, and then whatever, and I came up with kind of like whatever the vocals or the melody for the bridge. And then the way my brain works is I've become so obsessed with pop, and I've always been obsessed with pop since I was young, that like I just kind of like work through kind of like the dynamics of like what's what will be like a working song structure and like what will be this kind of thing, and then from there I will make like I have to, because there was a point when I began I would only have like 1 minute of instrumental for like 20 songs. I was just kind of like kind of have an idea, but
you're like that's it.
So like now I make myself kind of flesh out the whole instrumental, and then I kind of sit with that for like I don't know, a few weeks or whatever, and as I'm doing that I'm writing and sometimes the hook just comes or the chorus comes or the verse first, but I record everything at home, well every preliminary demo at home, because I have like a little snowball mic, and then I kind of tweak that and I mix it as if it's going to be finished. It always sounds like not that great because it's like a microphone for your computer, but,
right
and then I bring those demos just to the studio, and then I play it for him, my engineer Alexi, and then we just put the tracks through, and then I record everything. It's usually done in like a couple hours, just because I've kind of got all like the head work done before I have to go in and actually
got it. And so you kind of have all the base of it all, and he just kind of helps rework a few things.
Yeah, well, I recorded Real Line Music, which is a studio that's on Santa Monica and like kind of close to Wilcox. And Alexi, he was one of Britney Spears' main engineers for a couple of her like later albums as well.
Isn't that like down over by almost Formosa, right?
It's past Foremost.
Oh, it's past Foremost.
It's past Highland, actually.
Got it. I know what you're talking about now.
We come to California, it's like, no, it's past Highland.
There's a few of them out here, so it's actually kind of like, because there's like when you start going down just by like Foremost and on down, there's like a good like almost 10 of them. That whole little stretch.
Totally.
And so it's not like that, but it is. You kind of you're like, it's just out past Highland. It's because we know where we're at. But so you kind of have a little bit of it's just kind of you sit down, you kind of come up with different aspects of it all, you put it all together in your own like way of how it all comes to you, get it to the production studio, and then from there, do you have a song right away, or do you
the song's already done usually.
So it's done like that.
I haven't like fully done before I even get to the studio. That way there's no, because
there's no one else giving you other feedback or anything like that, or do you pass it around?
No. And that's also part of the reason why being solo is amazing too, because it's like, as much as I love collaborating with people, there's one thing I really don't love, which is getting to the end of finishing a song and pitching it to people for some reason. If I feel like I really am confident with something, I want to be able to walk away with it. And obviously, as my future music progresses, I'll find out if my like ego and confidence are correct. If people be like, well, you may like it a lot, Sean, but nobody else does. But so that way, there's also, I don't want, I'm paying for it too. So and Alexi's very quick, and he gets it because he's just extremely like, being an engineer is a completely different monster, which I could never in my entire life because it's just too technical.
Right.
But I can co-engineer to a degree with him. So usually the song's done, record for like a couple sessions, and then he mixes it. We co-mix, and then he masters it. And I'm just kind of, when he masters it, I'm just kind of like sitting there being like, I don't know what this is. But this is great.
Just smile and wave.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like, oh my god, this is so
stop
pretty.
waving at me. I'm like,
I'm just like, I'm just sitting here. So so then after that, so you've actually gotten a ton of different songs together, and you're working right now to get those all together into one album here coming up within this next year. But before that, you've actually put out several EPs, and the great thing about it is it really kind of quintessentially identifies who Glass Battles is, and really kind of puts that into perspective. And you did a really fun way of introducing each one to where they got one sort of sound for the first two. The middle one totally threw them off, and then the last one kind of really gave a nice tie-in to all three before that. So let's go into the first one with that, which is All Hearts, and that opened up. Well, that was kind of released right around.
It was like either late 2015 or
I think it was August. Because I Hope You're Happy came out at the end of 2015. December. So August going in for All Hearts. Really kind of go into what the inspiration was for that, and then kind of why you kind of put that one out there first.
I think, well, the biggest inspiration was kind of, there was like songs like Let's Head Back, or no, sorry, I name drop my own song. What's that song? That Drake song,
I don't know, it's Drake.
Anyway, so there was a song that I can't remember that. This is so embarrassing. Anyways, and then there's also songs like Love Me Harder by Ariana Grande. That had this like kind of like very weird, not weird, but very different mid-tempo kind of like Marvin Gaye feel to the kind of like the way the song went, and that was something that really appealed to me. And at the time, I was working at a nightclub called DBA, and
I had no DBA.
I knew one of my coworkers. Her name is Eli. She's a singer as well. She's an artist, and I went to go see her at Hotel Cafe, and she had like the most gorgeous voice. And she's the one that sings on the intro and the bridge and stuff. So,
and she's really good. I really like her. She's actually kind of like similar to a Robin or to a.
She's got like a lot of. I mean, like she's got like a very like
Halsey. That's what I was thinking. She's very much like a Halsey. I like her sound.
I'm like, no, she's got like a very vintage feel for sure. No, I think she's got such an incredible voice, and
it's very pretty.
And she, when I heard her, that like just like getting to know her too, we just kind of like it influenced the sort of vibe of the song, and that was the song where I literally was just like looping the strings from the bridge over and over and over until I came up with that, and I sent her that, and she's like, "That's wonderful," or whatever. And then from there, just kind of like once I got the chorus done, like I was just kind of like on the bus or whatever, and then like it literally was just like, and just kind of like recorded everything in my apartment, and then brought it into the studio and did it there. And finished it.
I love what you say, because in an interview you were done with this. I love kind of how you described it, kind of like as a little clip. That you've gravitated to the painful element of unrequited love, and the song really just centers around a secret meeting between people or one last moment together, and then nostalgia has always been spookiness to you, and you think that it really captures it. And I think that's really true of why I love that. It's like you said earlier, it's where you can cry on the dance floor. But it's a really fun, where you don't think it's about that until you really pay attention, and you're just like, oh shit, this is hardcore, and like really tugs at my heartstrings.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, even like this time of year and stuff, I feel like sentimentality and like nostalgia and like time changes and stuff are things that I always focus on. And like I feel like there's that weird sadness like around winter time where you're like excited for the holidays, but you're also like kind of sad for some reason. Like maybe it's just me actually. You're like, no, I don't know.
No, but honest, it's funny you say that. There was another artist I heard and that I talked with recently that had said the exact same thing, and he's like, I love Christmas, but I love the aspect that Christmas isn't always happy. It can be a remembrance
like New
of
Year's
something
is kind
sad.
of a sad thing too. I think it's also probably because there's so much expectation for like family and friends
Exactly.
and stuff. But I feel like just those types of things, like sentimentality, is always like even if you're thinking of like nice moments, if they don't exist anymore, it's always such a sad thing. I feel like that duality of kind of like really, having that wonderful memory, but having that sad realization that it just is memory is always something that kind of, and that's a lot of what was Let's Head Back Is Getting Dark as well, was kind of like in the same sort of like realm of like sentimentality and...
Right. So, okay, we'll go to the next one. So the next one is going to be about I Hope You're Happy. And it talks about really a relationship that turns sour. And it's kind of like bittersweet anguish, but also a little bit of heartache. But still, I mean, it's still that upbeat, that background music of really just, like you said, crying on the dance floor. What really inspired that one, and why put that one next after All of My Hearts?
After All Hearts came out, it was just sort of I Hope You're Happy it started off as a joke because Ashley, which is the song that actually happened was completely different from the original idea, but like one day Ashley, my bassist, we were just like chatting, and she was like, we were chatting about, she's like, I really hope Jennifer Aniston is happy. And I was like, me too. And like we kind of had this like thing, and like we had this like kind of conversation about it, like with those like weird things. We're like, we both agree on this really weirdly specific thing, but. And so the song started, I can't believe I'm saying this, I was never going to tell the story, but the song started off as I Hope Jennifer Aniston is happy. And it was going to be like, and I had no idea what the song was going to sound like, so I just kind of like was, listening to a lot of Erasure and stuff, and I kind of came up with this instrumental that sounded really pretty. Then obviously once I finished the instrumental, I was like, we can't have this song about like I Hope Jennifer Aniston is happy. It's ridiculous.
Why not? But
I mean, it could have been, but at that point, like, because I started to write it, and I was just like, this is like actually like a very personal song. And for me, it was just sort of kind of like, it's like trying to take the higher road, and also like if there's anything that I love to do to people that have broken my heart is like take the higher road while also making them feel like shit. And I feel like that's like it's the crux of passive aggression. But like it's just one of those things that like I kind of like
so I want Carrie Underwood without the bat.
Exactly. It's Carrie Underwood with a strongly worded email. Like for me, like that's always because then like you really you stick it to somebody in a way, but at the same time you're expressing your actual feelings, and I feel like that's just how heartache goes. That's how loss feels. Is that you kind of really don't have control over the situation, so you really have to choose to either be like I hope you're happy, or be like go fuck yourself. But they can sometimes be married.
Well, and that's what I know. That is what I love about it so much, is the fact that you really do say that. I'm like, what, it is what it is. I hope you're happy, but by the way, screw you and fuck you and your new hoe.
Which is actually the lyrics for the bridge.
Which is exactly, it's like word for word.
Just crying.
Bless his heart. Exactly. Bless your heart. And I will stab it in the back later. Okay, and so now let's go to what Pfeiffer is, which when I first heard this, it was like, I'm like, wait, what is this? Like, this is total, it was a total throws you off balance of what you've heard from the first two. What really was the inspiration of making this as your third one, following these kind of really emotional ones with the other two? I
think when the album's finished too, it's gonna be a clear distinction between tracks, just because I feel like I do run at 2 speeds, songwriting wise or production wise. Either it's like kind of like sad and sentimental, or it's kind of like like just super like confident, sort of empowered, like just strange shit. And I think honestly, like, I'm obsessed with Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman in Batman Returns. Like, any friend of mine knows that.
Which,
like,
honestly, I mean, if you can't go wrong with.
If you haven't seen it, I don't know who you are. But like, she's
you suck. I want your gay card back. Exactly. Your gay cards back.
Seriously, and then everything else she was in at that time period, like she was like such an incredible fierce icon, and I think I just literally built a song around kind of like that feeling, sort of. It really isn't obviously is not about Michelle Pfeiffer, but it's it's sort of just like, it's just, to me it was just sort of like I want it to be kind of as like dark and catchy and fun and spooky as as usual, and I think that it's those are my 2 speeds.
Well, and it was really great because it's like, I mean, I think it says it was kind of like you started off as a house single. and then like partway through it, you're just kind of like, no, I'm gonna do something different with it.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like it started off even like weirder than that too. And I think the weirdest part I think is probably that long intro, because like I kind of like started off with like I was like, I'm gonna make a real spooky song. And it's like I just like left it, but I think at that point I wanted to do something that was like kind of like close enough to house music, but without. I mean, I just feel like honestly like trends in music are wonderful. Obviously, looking back, I remember like kind of this time period as being like very house influenced and sort of kind of like post EDM kind of thing. I just didn't want to I didn't want to dive into it just for the sake of doing it, being like everybody's doing a house song, so I should too. So I literally kind of like started to like put house drums together with, which percussion is not like my finest production ability, but got close enough, and then from there I just kind of like built that song around it too, and I was kind of like layered 40 synths, as I always, because my engineer hates me because I'm like, he's like, do we have a lot of synths? And I'm just like, yeah, just a few. And it's like, it's just like
he sees the list and it's like, this is
let's get to work. This will take us a minute, but
it's just a terabyte.
Yeah, exactly. So I think honestly with the album that's coming out, there's a lot of songs that kind of are in the realm of Pfeiffer as well, and a lot more just kind of like straight up like almost industrial pop music, but not quite as heavy or complex. But yeah, it's one of my favorite songs. I feel like that's the most quintessential Glass Battle song is at the moment is like either Pfeiffer or Let's Head Back, It's Getting Dark, just because they both kind of like encapsulate like the two sort of like yin and yang of kind of whatever is fucking going on in here.
Because you never want to know what's going on in there because that shit cries. But it really, I mean, and then definitely we'll talk about the last one with Let's Head Back, It's Getting Dark, because that really, I feel like that one ties in so well, the first two with the third, and it really kind of plays that nice, like you said, the kind of funky, weird, spooky part of it all, but also the really cool, like that little bit of harmony in there, and that kind of melody that really plays well with what you do. And we're going to do a quick clip from it, just so that people can kind of get a quick sound of what it's like. But really just kind of pay attention, because I really love how you can hear, and if you haven't heard the first three, really hear those first three, and then come back and then listen to this one, because it really kind of encapsulates, like he said, all of what this really means. So we're going to play that really quick.
But it was true. Now there's no room to pass on through. Let's get back, it's getting dark. Someone is saving my life. Lights still shine in this crowded park. Let's get back, it's getting dark. Someone is saving my life. So much time to enjoy apart. And I remember you said.
Well, that was Let's Get Back, It's Getting Dark, and I just love it because it's so, like you said, it's this fun thing you can do where it's like you're dancing and it's like the fun like head bop to it, but it's that story behind it which is really encapsulating, and it really again plays back to what you were doing for the first two. And did you find it was really hard to merge those two aspects of you together, or was it just...
I don't think so. I think honestly, like it just like that's kind of how I always have operated when doing music. Because I don't like at some point I probably will have like an actual proper ballad, but like I'm not really one that like I don't think I'm gonna be at a piano anytime being like like, to me I like there to be like a balance like in every song. Like if it's dark and scary, I want it also to be like sexy and like fun as well. And if it's sad, I want it to be like fun as well. But I think honestly, just I don't know. It's never. That's just kind of how my brain works. Because I also think it's like a lot more sad if you're like actually like out celebrating something that makes you sad. There's like that freeing moment that kind of like really kind of empowers you as well, as opposed to just kind of wallowing and being like, nothing against any of that music by the way. I'm just saying that's how I feel like when I'm making a song. Like,
no, I totally get it. And I mean you do have a really good balance obviously through all of it. It's just I love how this last one that you put out really summed up you as an individual and also as an artist, and really took all your music that you had put forth before and really gave it a fun kind of like so for the last part of my teaser boom and it really put it out there.
Like the first three singles were kind of just, they were in a way, because they were supposed to be an EP. I was going to do an initial EP and then a second one, and I pre-planned too much, so I had planned both at the same time in my head, and that's why I decided to do a full length, just because I have 4 singles out. This last single is probably the first, I suppose, like the first official single from the actual album. It's going to be kind of like tied in. Both songs, the other songs will be on it as well. But this is kind of like, at least tone-wise, and the way that ended up, like the spatial sort of like the bigness of that is going to be kind of really, it's consistent with the rest of the songs on the album.
And I want to talk about also what the title of the album is too, which I really like, Pillow Talk.
No, that was the first
That was
two.
going
That was going to be the first EP was Pillow Talk.
Okay.
Well, the first EP was going to be All Hearts,
right.
which also people will know. I was going to do an All Hearts EP with 3 songs on it, and then I was going to do a Pillow Talk EP, which was going to be like 3 dark songs, and I was going to do like kind of like this like weird duality thing. And I was like, you know what, like screw it. And then I started the demo for Pillow Talk, and I actually haven't told anybody the title of this album yet, just because it's an entire different thing. Because I moved into like a really weird, like, the theme of the album is kind of psychedelic. It's kind of like just strange, but like in a very kind of cerebral way. It'll make more sense as it comes out. I'm going to be rolling out kind of like teasers and stuff to create that sort of mystery and hype or whatever. But no, Pillow Talk is actually a song that will be on the album, but it's
okay.
It's
So it was associated more with like the first couple like ones that you did originally, and so
I play it live all the time too. So like, it's a song that we always play live, and it was going to be the Pillow Talk EP, and I actually put out promotional material for the Pillow Talk EP.
Right.
So you obviously did your due diligence.
I thought it was. I thought it was part of the
But I gotcha. I'm just kidding. But
sneaky motherfucker.
No, but the album. I'm gonna let everybody. I have the title. I keep saying it's yet to be titled. It's actually everything's titled. All the songs are done essentially for the most part. I'm just kind of working through demos before I bring them into the studio, but it's gonna be my little surprise once it's finished.
I hate surprises. I'm the worst of surprises. I want to know now. But no, it's really great and exciting that this is coming up, and this is really, you're planning this for almost like right at the beginning of 2018, which is like 3 fucking weeks away. I can't believe it's almost here.
It's crazy.
And so you're gonna roll it out kind of like one a month on the way, or are you gonna do a few in the beginning and then kind of like just play it by ear as it goes?
I'm not sure. I'm not gonna do. I don't know if I'm gonna do the full album out. I'm not gonna Beyonce this because I think honestly because I'm clearly not Beyonce in so many ways, but.
Wait, no, you don't have the tits? Is that
just
it?
The tits is
just
really
the tits, that's really it.
Everything else is exactly the same. But I think honestly, I'm trying to figure out. I think the only thing that may delay the release of songs in the album will be me figuring out the best avenue to do it through, because I've been talking to a lot of people that are interested in working with me in distribution and other elements of the future of my career. So just seeing on how those things play out will kind of determine how the album gets released. And at this point, like whatever anybody who has a knowledge of sort of the business of music, if they have bigger knowledge than I do, like I'm like, that's kind of where I'm like, please take the driver's seat with it.
Yeah.
And like when it comes to like, promotion and publicity, like I'm down for whatever will get my music to as many listeners as possible, and I think that's the only goal that I kind of want to reach before the album comes out.
Gotcha. So besides the album, is there anything people can expect from you within the beginning of 2018 or throughout the next year? Kento Music is, or just Kento, I guess he does music. My friend Kento, who is a musician, he's also a brilliant videographer and graphic designer as well, and he did a little promotional video for the single when it came out, and he's actually helping me put together the video as well. And I think he's super busy. He has so many projects at once, but I think we're kind of taking it piece by piece and kind of working out ideas and stuff, and hopefully that will be out sooner than later, because I haven't had a video yet. I've had opportunities to have videos, but I'm very particular with how I want it to be, and I want it to be high quality and something, because this will be there forever. It's the internet now, so like I kind of can't really like cut corners and be like, I hate that, and everyone's like, too bad. So sucks.
It's there forever. But
is there one song in particular you already have that you were going to do the music video for?
Yeah, Let's Head Back, It's Getting Dark.
Okay, so that will be your first music video single with that one.
Yeah.
And then anything else like tour-wise, or anything coming up with any kind of Pride or anything like that?
So I would love to do Pride. We did Pride as a band. We did it a few years ago, but they don't usually. I don't think they book artists like typically like 2 times within the same scope. But I'm kind of a new artist now. But that was such an amazing experience, just because like the crowd is insane and the whole.
Because that was like 2013. Yeah.
But I'm doing South by Southwest again this year.
Okay, awesome.
I'm just trying to figure out what we're doing, because we used to, as a band, we would stay at the Driscoll, which is the hotel on 6th Street. It's like amazing, but it's just I want to try something different this year. Maybe Airbnb it, and I don't know. I'm telling you, this is like the most boring part of it. I'm like, I don't know, like call a friend, like, but.
So if anyone's gonna be in Austin this year and you want to have a great house party,
I know,
or you wanna host this boy his Craigslist account. No, I'm kidding.
I'm like, Craigslist name is.
Yeah. Or you can kick him, or you can like find him on Grindr, or you can find him on Snapchat or whatever, public, private, or anything in between. But yeah, and then anything else besides really South by Southwest, anything else they can kind of keep an eye out for?
So really... South by Southwest for sure, and then I think as the years progress, there's a couple other festivals that I haven't confirmed yet for sure. So I don't want to say anything, but that'd be like later in the summer or the fall of next year.
Okay.
I think honestly for me, I'm just kind of like I want to have a couple things, play some really meaningful shows here in Los Angeles, and just kind of like have a real proper send off for the album when it comes out, and then from there kind of hopefully
that leads to other
it will have its wheels of its own and that kind of thing. So.
Got it. Awesome. Well, we really want to thank you, Sean, for being here today and really kind of showing us this really cool aspect of what you do, and also showing us a new fun genre that you're
spook-pop.
Yeah, you're bringing it into the industry, and if anyone out there wants to know how to do it, check this out. But you can always check out Sean on all his stuff for Glass Battles, and make sure you go and check out all his stuff online. It's really amazing, and go to YouTube, watch the videos, and listen to the music, and download it. Duh.
At Glass Battles, #Glass Battles, SoundCloud.com, Glass Battles music.
SoundCloud?
Yeah. I'm on everywhere. Spotify, iTunes,
SoundCloud. Find it, buy it,
Amazon,
God damn it.
Google Play.
Yeah. And then we
Alexa.
also just go and find it online. It's fucking everywhere. We also want to thank everyone here for producing us for GayLifeLA.com, as well as King Resort Apartments for giving us this amazing space.
Thank you, Gay Life LA.
We really appreciate all
that. Thank you, EmpressOfWeHo.
Thank you, This gay. We want to just make sure you guys check us out next week. And if you ever have any questions, you can always ask us online at GayLifeLA.com, or also just my shit for Empress West Hollywood. So I'm here, I'm queer, and ta-da. And so we'll tune out with a little bit from here. Bye, guys.